Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at something most of us literally interact with every single day, yet we rarely stop to actually analyze it. Imagine for a second the physical journey of the device you might even be using right now to listen to this. Long before an iPhone arrives in that perfect minimalist white box, it exists as raw materials scattered across multiple continents. Those materials are forged into highly specialized components, shipped thousands of miles to massive assembly hubs, and then finally delivered right into our hands with just extraordinary precision. And behind that flawless execution, that perfect unboxing experience we all know, sits one of the most sophisticated supply chains ever created. But there's a story behind the screen, a hidden danger kind of lurking within this operational masterpiece. Okay, let's dive into this because the contrast here is absolutely fascinating. On one hand, you have this incredibly reliable, sleek device in your hand. It just works, right? But on the other hand, holding that device up is a highly complex, really precarious global network. For years, Apple's supply chain efficiency hasn't just been good. It has literally been their ultimate competitive advantage. But during recent global disruptions, things like geopolitical tensions and massive material shortages, a lot of people started asking a very serious question. Have they become too dependent? What exactly is the hidden risk inside the world's most successful tech company? Well, the answer boils down to one word: dependency. It is a deep dependency on highly specialized suppliers, a dependency on advanced semiconductor manufacturers, a dependency on massive, large-scale assembly partners, and a profound reliance on highly concentrated global manufacturing networks. And honestly, this is what makes this case study so incredibly important for anyone interested in business strategy, because it shows us plain and simple that even one of the world's strongest, most profitable companies can face massive vulnerability if their supply chain concentration gets too high.
Act 1, the triumphant machine. Let's take a quick look at operational perfection.
To truly understand the risk, we first have to understand the triumph, right? We have to look at why Apple's supply chain became universally admired in the very first place. Their strategy was basically a quest for absolute operational perfection, and it was built on 5 distinct pillars: precision, scale, speed, quality control, and operational efficiency. Now, Apple didn't just aim for 1 or 2 of these. They built a system focused entirely on maximizing all of them simultaneously. And here's a really fun, surprising fact for you. Before Tim Cook was CEO, his original claim to fame at Apple was mastering this exact system. He was the architect. The company developed incredibly close relationships with specialized suppliers and manufacturing partners who were actually capable of producing advanced tech at an enormous scale. This is exactly what allowed Apple to launch products globally with such remarkable consistency. Very few companies in history could match their unprecedented coordination across design, supplier management, inventory, and actual manufacturing. It was a total operational triumph. But here is where our narrative takes a bit of a plot twist. Act 2. The fatal flaw exposed. Let's talk about supplier dependency. You see, the very optimization that makes Apple so undeniably strong, the exact efficiency that supports their incredible profitability, well, it's precisely what exposes them to danger. So the crucial point is this: highly optimized systems often create concentration risk. Think about it. When you push for extreme efficiency, you are basically forced to concentrate your power, your resources, and your partnerships. You go out, you find the absolute best supplier who can do it the fastest and the cheapest at scale, and you lean heavily on them. But that concentration inevitably breeds a really dangerous strategic dependency. Let's break down what actually goes into a modern piece of technology: processors, displays, camera systems, memory chips, battery technologies. Many of these components come from relatively small groups of advanced suppliers globally. Let's look at a real-world consequence here to put it into perspective. Imagine a single factory over in Japan or Taiwan that makes a highly customized camera sensor. If that facility experiences even a localized disruption, it doesn't just stop that one component. It causes a massive ripple effect that can stall millions of product shipments worldwide. You can't just switch to a backup factory overnight. Replacing these specialized global suppliers quickly during a crisis is nearly impossible, simply because not every manufacturer can meet Apple's rigorous standards around quality, scale, timing, and tech capability.
Which brings us to Section 3, the China concentration. This is where we look at geographical risk.
We have to look at a specific geographical battleground where this dependency is super visible, and that's China. Let's break down exactly why this happened, looking strictly at the objective operational reasons. China became central to global electronics manufacturing because of a compounding set of factors.
They offered large-scale industrial ecosystems, totally unmatched manufacturing infrastructure, and something called supplier clustering, which is where partners operate incredibly close together. Add to that massive logistics capability and just an incredible, unprecedented workforce scale. For Apple, this created major operational advantages. Production could scale up incredibly fast, manufacturing coordination improved drastically, and costs remained really, really competitive. But as we're all kind of learning the hard way, concentration in one region creates immense geopolitical and operational risk. When your entire system is heavily clustered in one single geographic area, things like political tensions, trade restrictions, or sudden labor disruptions can affect the system significantly. It can even completely paralyze it. During recent global health disruptions and localized lockdowns, these vulnerabilities completely transformed. They went from being theoretical business risks into massive, real-world shipping delays that affected customers all over the globe. Suddenly, the supply chain became front-page news. Moving right along to Section 4, the semiconductor choke point. Let's dig into systemic dependency.
Let's shift our focus from geography to the single component that acts as the ultimate bottleneck for modern tech, and that is semiconductors. This creates what business theory actually calls systemic dependency. Let's ground our story in that definition really quickly. Systemic dependency is a vulnerability created when an entire global operation relies on a highly specialized component that only a limited number of firms can produce. Advanced chips are absolutely critical to Apple's products. But here's the catch. Semiconductor manufacturing is extremely specialized and highly concentrated globally. Only a very limited number of firms on the planet possess the capability to produce these advanced chips. If semiconductor supply becomes constrained, the entire machine slows down. And the recent global chip shortage demonstrated this perfectly, constraining even an operational titan like Apple. And this brilliantly illustrates a vital strategic lesson. Technology companies may appear utterly dominant externally, right? They project this sleek, invincible brand identity while still depending heavily on fragile, highly concentrated supplier ecosystems underneath. It really peels back the curtain on how modern business actually functions. And that leads us to Act 3, the strategic dilemma, the battle between efficiency and resilience. This brings us to a universal reckoning that applies to virtually every modern business operating on a global scale today. Companies are facing a really painful tug of war. On one side, you have efficiency and control. Highly concentrated supply chains lower your costs, they improve your coordination, and they allow for incredibly effective scaling. But on the other side, you have resilience and diversification. Diversifying your suppliers and regions vastly improves your flexibility and safety, but it significantly increases your complexity and your cost. It is literally the ultimate battle between keeping operations cheap and fast versus keeping them safe but expensive. When we break this down analytically, it becomes really clear. A strategy of pure optimization keeps your costs low, but your disruption risk absolutely skyrockets and your flexibility drops. On the flip side, if you choose diversification, your disruption risk drops to low and your flexibility is high, but your costs surge. For years and years, global businesses prioritized optimization heavily. Efficiency was king. But recent global disruptions are forcing companies to finally reconsider whether extreme efficiency actually created entirely too much exposure.
This is a profound shift in business thinking. Let's look at this quote. Procurement strategy is now a core strategic issue rather than only a purchasing function. Think about that as a major revelation in our story today. Supply chain is no longer just the back office. It essentially is the product. Long-term supplier relationships directly influence a company's innovation capability, their product quality, manufacturing speed, and ultimately their competitive advantage. If your supplier ecosystem weakens, well, your product launches, your customer experience, and your profitability all suffer simultaneously.
So, what should you actually take away from this explainer? Let's summarize the core lessons here. First, highly optimized systems create dependency. Second, supplier concentration drastically increases your vulnerability during a disruption. Third, achieving resilience through diversification means you are likely going to have to sacrifice some of that efficiency. And finally, operational strength in modern business depends not just on your internal capabilities, but on the invisible networks of your suppliers. Competitive advantage is no longer just about designing great products. It's about ensuring the global system supporting those products can actually survive uncertainty. The story of Apple's supply chain shows us both the staggering power and the hidden risks of a highly optimized global ecosystem. It leaves every business leader, and frankly, anyone studying strategy, with a real paradigm-shifting thought. As we look at the invisible armor required to survive in an unpredictable world, you just have to ask yourself, is your global system ready for the next disruption? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. It's been a blast, and I cannot wait to dive into our